this is it. We've gone through the most disappointing, we've gone through the worst, and we've gone through the most surprising. Now it is time for the big one. The big video to end off our look back into cinema from technically last year, but I'm technically calling it this year a lot for the sake of consistency. Yeah, this video took forever to get out, and it's literally taken until the end of the month to get this out. Now, this wasn't originally planned to come out this late. This was supposed to come out a little earlier than this, around, I want to say, the 27th, I think, but a lot's been going on. A lot of very unexpected things have been happening lately, so things have been getting pushed around a lot, and the movie year-end list ended up getting pushed around more than pretty much the grand majority of other content. So, because of that, and because I want February to be a nice stress-free month where I look at only day one releases and release a few covers, and then that's it. Only 9 videos that month. I want to get this done now. So, let's run through our honorable mentions real quick. Most of them we've talked about either in full reviews that you can find on the channel, or just talked about in the most surprising list. So, let's run through them very quick. First up, Orion in the Dark. I already talked about it. Best thing DreamWorks did this year that wasn't Wild Robot, I haven't seen it yet. Watchmen Chapter 1, barely missed the list, purely from stiff competition. Venom 3, great ending to the trilogy. If, surprisingly heartfelt and really entertaining little family movie with Ryan Reynolds. The Roadhouse remake, just good old stupid fun. And The First Omen for being way better than I thought it was going to be. Okay, that is literally all the honorable mentions I have. This is a very long list, and this is going to be a very long video, so let's not waste any more time and dive right into it. I'm Jack Small, welcome back to Animation Station, your number one substitute for anything animation, and welcome to the top 20 best movies of 2024. Keep in mind, my own subjective opinion, you do not have to agree with me. I'm not expecting you to agree with me, especially in my number ones, which a lot of people are going to call out as just me having a nerdgasm. But I can't lie to you about my opinion, man. These are the movies that I thought were the big shining highlights in a pretty underwhelming year for cinema. So, without further ado or delay, let's dive in. Starting at first, at number 20, is a movie I did give a full review on, but it's one that didn't really get many views on the channel, unfortunately. But it is a really funny, really entertaining movie, and that is The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. I didn't really know what to expect from this movie aside from Henry Cavill and Alan Ritchson. Yes, Jack Reacher is in this one. So, what is it exactly? Well, it's a goofy, off-the-wall action comedy about these big, over-the-top characters doing crazy big, over-the-top stuff, pretty much. That's pretty much the simplest way I can put it without going into spoilers, and I'm not going to look up a synopsis because this video is already going to be long enough as is, but this is a great movie. I thought it was absolutely hilarious, one of the funniest movies of the year, and I had a great time watching it. If you have not seen this movie yet, which a lot of people did, unfortunately it didn't do very well when it came out in the box office, so if you haven't seen it yet, check it out. I think it just might surprise you. It's a pretty funny, interesting little action film. So, that's number 20. 19, not going to talk about this one much. It was on the most surprising list, The Bike Riders. This is a movie that I really, really enjoyed, that I didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did. Like, yeah, I was already on board with Tom Hardy and Austin Butler in a motorcycle club drama. Like, that sounds badass as hell. And when I first started seeing reviews of it before I saw it, and people were saying it was mid, I was disappointed because then I lowered my expectations pretty drastically, and I'm like, okay, people are saying this movie's not very good, so, I guess I'm not in for a good time, and I'm in for a very disappointing movie. Well, honestly, no, I had a different experience than the grand majority of the consensus. I thought this movie was great. I thought this movie was very well done, very well acted. Jodie Comer especially, I forgot to talk about her in the most surprising list. She was amazing in the movie. She was absolutely amazing. She should have gotten a freaking Oscar nomination. Seriously, she was that good. And then Tom Hardy's great. Austin Butler, dude's just been on a tear, man. He's just been making great movie after great movie. It's crazy. And then you have excellent directing, and while the second half of the second half of the movie, as in the second half of the second act leading into the final act, has a little bit of a pacing problem. It moves a little too fast. It still delivers a satisfying enough conclusion for me to say, I want that on physical. And that's what I did. I got it on physical. So, yeah, I'm watched it a couple times, and I'm going to be watching it a couple times more. It's a great movie. I personally really enjoyed it, and now I kind of want to check out the book it's based on. So, it did its job, at least in my personal opinion. So, that's number 19. Moving on. 18 and 17, these are two movies that I unfortunately can't really say a whole lot about because they're documentaries. And usually with documentaries, they are very self-explanatory. So we're going to run through these very quickly. Let's do number 18 first, which is Superman, the Christopher Reeve story. I mean, this one had to make the list. If you guys saw how much I loved the first two Superman movies when I did those reviews, you know that I have grown a fondness for Christopher Reeve and his incredible, incredible performance as Superman. Even in the two really, really bad, stinky sequels, Superman 3 and 4, he was still a great Superman. And here, this is pretty much us getting his story about not only how he became Superman, but also how he went through a tragic accident, became paraplegic, and is pushing forward, how he pushed forward awareness for his condition and to raise charity and money for it. Like, dude was an absolutely outstanding human being, and this documentary will make you cry. And I wish I got to do a review on it, but by the time I saw it, it was pretty much already too late for me to get a review out. So, sorry, Soups. Unfortunately, you're gonna have to just stay as an entry on this list, but you are really good. Then 17 is Jim Henson Idea Man. This is the one I did do a review on, and it's because Jim Henson is very near and dear to my heart. I grew up on pretty much all his shows. Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock especially. That show's elite, and I do not care what anyone says otherwise. And of course, The Muppets. So, getting a documentary about him was definitely a surprise. I was not expecting it to come out this late after his passing, but I saw it, and yeah, I cried a little. Not to mention, it showed off a bunch of really cool commercials that were originally lost media that Jim did before he got his big break in Hollywood. And that made it really interesting to me. And seeing those commercials and seeing how he got his start and how he became the man that he became is amazing. It's a truly wonderful story of a truly wonderful man that unfortunately was just gone too soon. But if you are someone who loves Jim Henson, you're going to really love this documentary. And even if it is a bunch of information you already know, it's still worth watching. It's a great documentary by Ron Howard, of all people. So, check it out if you haven't. It's a great documentary. I wish I could say more, but with documentaries, they're pretty self-explanatory. Moving on. 16, this is one that's going to get me a bit of crap, and spoiler alert, there are a lot of horror movies on this list, and it's because while animation decided to take a giant nosedive off a freaking cliff, horror decided to just have another crazy year akin to 2022. Like, the horror of this year was surprisingly great. Like, yeah, there were a couple stinkers in there, but most of them were actually really, really great. And this is one of them. So coming in at number 16, people are probably going to give me crap for it. It's Blood and Honey 2. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. Yes, it's on the best list, and no, I do not care if I'm the only one that does it. This movie was awesome. Like, it took everything that the original laid the foundation of, on top of being a cheesy B-movie, and decided to just go all balls out crazy. Practical effects, bigger budget, bigger designs, and insane gore that would even make Terrifier cringe. Like, it is so freaking good. Not to mention, the guy that got to play Christopher Robin is way better than the last one they got. That Christopher Robin was one of the worst parts of the original. But here, this Christopher Robin's a lot better, and I thought his acting was actually really good. And then the story they tried to tell was really good too, and we got to see more horror versions of the Winnie the Pooh characters. Like, obviously not Eeyore. Eeyore's still dead, but I mean, like, Owl, Tigger, Piglet came back for some weird unexplained reason that goes unexplained. And Pooh has a new look that is way better than his old one. Even as someone that actually enjoys Blood and Honey 1, I cannot disagree that his look in the original was pretty bad. But here, it's a lot more unique, it's a lot more interesting, and not to mention, they based all their different personalities for this horror version off of slasher villains. Like, you have Owl, who's like the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. You have this menacing, hulking monster, Winnie, who's a lot like Jason. And then you have Tigger cracking jokes and saying bitch because he's an obvious ripoff of Freddy. And then Piglet is kind of Leatherface and kind of not. It's a little hard to explain, especially considering the fact that he gets killed so early on. But outside of that, I think it did a great job setting up a interesting Pooniverse, as they call it. I know, stupid name, but I'm rolling with it. And while I have not seen Peter Pan's Neverland Nightmare yet, I am intrigued to see where this Pooniverse goes. Half me just wants to say Pooniverse and just be the most inappropriate person on the internet. The Pooniverse is off to a great start. And if you want more information, go watch my review. Speaking of movies I did a review on, and more great horror movies, let's talk about number 15, which may also be a little controversial, but it is my personal opinion, and even though I am aware of this movie's controversy, it still belongs on the list. And that movie is Late Night with the Devil. This movie took me by surprise. Not to the point of being on the most surprising list, no, but because it came pretty much out of nowhere. It was pretty much a movie that was satirizing late-night television, and you had David Dastmalchian playing this, the host of this live show, who's literally doing anything and everything to keep his show afloat. And the story is about his last broadcast, where he decided to, for his big Halloween special, make contact with the devil himself. It goes about as well as you'd expect, and it gets pretty batshit pretty quick. Now, yes, let's talk about the controversy, the elephant in the room that a lot of people want to crap on this movie for. There is a scene in this movie that uses AI artwork. I do not support that at all, but it's one small part of a really, really great movie, so I'm willing to throw it aside. Not to mention, AI is so commonplace nowadays, I'm honestly just numb to it. But yeah, I wish they didn't use AI to generate that image, but sometimes when you have a low budget, you gotta do what you gotta do, man. But outside of that, the movie's great. David Dastmalchian's performance is amazing. It shows why he, a lot like Jake Gyllenhaal, is one of the most underrated and underappreciated actors in Hollywood. And the ending is as amazingly wild and crazy as you want it to be. Not much else to say. If you like horror movies and you like late-night television, I think you're really going to dig this one. Like, throw out the stupid AI controversy bullcrap and just enjoy the incredible movie in front of you. That's my advice. Speaking of movies that are controversial, 14 is the one that was originally going to be my favorite animated movie of the year until I actually saw my favorite animated movie of the year, which, if you saw my most surprising list, you already know what it is. But this is a close number 2, and this is very controversial because everyone else besides me hates this movie. But I don't care. I am a huge fan of this particular IP. I will continue to be a huge fan of this IP. And I am, yes, very excited. We're getting 2 movies of this IP this year. Super excited for that. But for now, let's talk about Saving Bikini Bottom. The first spin-off movie. And yes, I get the whole, oh, but Steven Hillenburg didn't want spin-offs. First of all, that freaking thing, that interview was years ago. 2, he's probably the one that greenlit Camp Coral in the first place, considering the fact that he was still working on the show at that point, and he was working with Tim Hill on the 3rd movie. And, I mean, it's SpongeBob. It's Nickelodeon. They're going to do whatever they can to keep making money, regardless of what they have to do to get it. I mean, Dan Schneider exists. Need I say more? But with Saving Bikini Bottom, I was very intrigued by this movie. It's another Netflix movie, and it's a movie that focuses on Sandy. Yes, Sandy gets to be the star of the show here instead of SpongeBob. I mean, SpongeBob and his friends are still here, but they're very much in the background. Aside from, of course, SpongeBob himself, who tags along with Sandy because he's SpongeBob. They had to. And even though he is a little bit intrusive at times, and there are a few jokes that don't really land with him, Sandy, on the other hand, really carried this movie for me. This was one of her best appearances in SpongeBob in years. Because up to this point, she had pretty much become flanderized to just being a scientist, to just not really having much of an actual personality. But with this movie, they pretty much throw all the science crap out the window, aside from the weird mechanical horse thing. And instead, we get to see her countryside because she goes on land with SpongeBob, and they end up running into Sandy's family. And these guys were what made this movie for me, aside from Sandy herself. They are such vivid, hilarious, unique, interesting, and instantly memorable characters. And the weird thing is, most of them are girls, and most of them are voiced by Daphne Blake herself, Grey DeLisle. Yeah, that's one woman doing all those voices. That is just flexing your skills, man. That is impressive. When I heard through Instagram that it was all Grey DeLisle doing all the voices of the female members of the family, I was pretty impressed, to say the least. And I'm like, yeah, flex your skills. You're a legendary voice actor. Flex. Okay, me being cringy aside. Other than that, the movie's funny, the animation's really great, and the ending, the final act, as goofy as it is, also got surprisingly dark. We got to see SpongeBob disintegrate. We didn't need that, but I kind of dig that they went in such a dark, twisted direction for like 3 minutes. And sure, say what you want about it, it's at least entertaining. And unlike movies like freaking Kung Fu Panda 4, it didn't bore the hell out of me. So, because of that, it's on the list. I do not care if it's just me doing it. I really dug this movie. I still really dig this movie. And from what I've heard, the Plankton movie is the one that everyone actually likes. Yeah, it got leaked. Of course it did. All these Netflix SpongeBob movies are getting leaked. Thankfully, I haven't seen it. I'm waiting until its actual release in March to see it. But from what I've heard, it's actually pretty good, and most SpongeBob fans are happy with it. So maybe it'll be even better. Maybe it might top my list this year. I don't know. Between that and SpongeBob 4, it's just going to be a pretty big year for our favorite yellow Peruvian. And I cannot wait to see the crazy adventures that he gets up to in the future. So, yep, I love this movie. I don't care if I'm the only one on this hill. I will die on this hill. Moving on. 13, I spent way too much time on Super Bikini Bottom. I'm sorry. 13 is the Garfield movie. This is my favorite anime movie of the year. I already talked about it in the most surprising list, but here's a quick summary. It's pretty much a Garfield movie that throws back to old school comedy slapstick. What I mean by that is that it doesn't feel like modern comedy slapstick, where everything just feels over-exaggerated for the sake of over-exaggerated. No, in this movie, it's a lot more planned out. It's a lot clever. It's a lot more sharp. Like, it's a little hard to explain, but when you watch the movie, you'll kind of understand what I mean. It feels very old school with its comedy, and as someone who grew up on those very old school cartoons, that definitely appealed to me. And like I said in my most surprising list, I was surprised how well Chris actually fit for Garfield. And also, like I said in that list, we could have done without the whole dad side plot thing, but it had a really sweet ending, so I'm willing to give it a pass. And the villain is one of the most enjoyable villains that I've seen in any animated movie in at least the past 5 years. Like, the cat in this movie is freaking hilarious. One of the coolest freaking villains I've seen in a while. So, yeah, I already did pretty much a full review on this one. Not to mention I talked about it in the most surprising list, so if you want more information, go there. But my point is, Garfield movie is my favorite animated movie of the year, and a lot like Super Bikini Bottom is what everyone crapped on, and I don't understand. I thought the movie was funny, I thought the movie was heartfelt, and I thought the movie was way better than it had any right to be. So, that's number 13, the Garfield movie. Moving on, number 12. Yeah, I know, I'm kind of flying through these. This is a very long list, so I'm trying to keep it somewhat brief. 12 is another movie that just barely missed out on the most surprising list, and it's the movie that I'm pretty sure will be on most people's best list, but I honestly am not entirely sure. I haven't seen every single one, but I have seen one or two where this movie popped up. Monkey Man! Oh, this movie was just plain fun. It's a movie by Dev Patel that has just insane crazy action after insane crazy action. Like, a lot of people have been calling it the Indian John Wick, and I kind of understand where they're coming from with that. Aside from the fact that this one's a lot more hand-to-hand combat, whereas John Wick's a lot more about gunplay. Outside of that, that's where the comparisons with this and John Wick stop. Its story is entirely wholly unique. Its character is very, very interesting, and I was invested pretty much all the way through. This is another one I'm pretty sure I did a review on, and I really, really dug it. For the action alone, it deserves the best list. Speaking of movies for the action alone that deserve the best list, number 11, I'm going to be brief on this one too. The Crow remake, or re-adaptation. I'm sorry, I made that same mistake. No surprising list. Yeah, let me get this out of the way right now. This is a re-adaptation of familiar source material, not a straight-up remake of the original, okay? Don't get it twisted, it's not the same thing. Anyway, with that out of the way, people hate this movie. I am not one of them. I am the one that actually really loved this movie and was really surprised at how it actually turned out, especially considering the fact that outside of City of Angels, I was not a fan of any of the other Crow movies. Even the original kind of bored me. So this new one was a lot more my speed. It was a lot more unique, it was a lot more hard-edged, and the gore and the kills were freaking insane in the best way possible. And Bill Skarsgård, dude is just so talented, man. He's so talented. Outside of Boy Meets World, I don't think I've ever seen a movie... Well, Boy Kills World, excuse me. I don't think I've seen a movie that he's in that I don't like. So, yeah, I already talked about this one at length in the most surprising list, but to sum it up like this, it has amazing gore, fantastic action, great acting, and a very believable romance. Like, I loved the relationship between Eric and Shelley in this version, with Fika Twigs and Bill Skarsgård. I thought they had great chemistry all the way through. And when we do get to that crazy final act at the Opera House, oh man, it's the one scene, like I said in my most surprising list, that everyone agrees was badass as hell. So, for that scene alone, it deserves a list, but because it's an actual great movie that I had a great time watching, it gets on the best list. It's an awesome movie. I will never understand why people crap on it outside of their own toxic, obvious, blatant, weird, cult obsession with the original. I don't know. Just me. Okay, let's stop the controversy because now we're going to talk about number 10, a movie that I'm pretty sure is on pretty much everyone else's best list. And the only reason it's not higher is simply stiff competition. But that's not to knock it, because Dune Part 2. Yeah, we gotta talk about this movie. From Denis Villeneuve's incredible direction to the phenomenal writing to the insanely good acting from a very stacked cast, including Timothée Chalamet, who just continues to prove himself as one of the big, new, awesome actors of Hollywood. Then you had a great story. I loved how it actually switched things up from the original 1974 David Lynch film, and how we're actually going to be getting a third one and an adaptation of Dune Messiah, which I'm actually quite interested in. And I don't know if I've said this in my review or not, but the way I can put this movie is that this is everything that Star Wars wants to be. The way I mean by that is that it is interesting adult sci-fi that feels epic and grandiose, but is not cringe. It's a little hard to explain. Like I've said before, I'm not the biggest Star Wars guy, so maybe that's why this one appealed to me more, but I really dug Dune Part 2. It was an incredible sequel to an already incredible Part 1. Seriously, if I watched it back when it came out, it would have made that year's best list. But Dune Part 2, just takes it up even further, and even though I was kind of blindsided by the fact that it's not the last part of the story, yeah, that was my own stupid fault for not doing research. It's still a great movie. It's still a great time, and if you love the first part of Dune, you're gonna love this one too. It is the big new sci-fi franchise, and I can't wait to see how it concludes in a few years. That's all I got for Dune Part 2. Everything else that's been said about it has already been said by a ton more qualified people than me, so let's move on. Alright, now we're going to get into the thick of it, as I'm going to put it, because there are a whopping six horror movies in the top 10. I'm going to kind of fly through most of these because I've given most of these full reviews, or because they're pretty self-explanatory, but regardless, there's still a lot to say. So let's talk about them one by one, shall we? Starting at number 9 with Alien Romulus, the Fede Alvarez Alien movie that took Alien out of its horrible dumpster fire grave that was dug thanks to Alien Covenant, and revitalized the franchise by making a movie that takes place in between the original Alien and Aliens, returning the series to hardcore horror and some pretty stellar suspense scenes. Like, this movie, it was made for Alien fans. Like, if you love the good Alien movies, you're gonna dig this one. Not just from the references and the callbacks, but also because it's its own really interesting, very well told story. Then you have great cinematography, and the fact that it's actually freaking scary. It has been a while since we've been able to say that about an Alien movie, but this one did it, and because of that alone, it gets the best list. But it gets a top 10 spot because it was an incredible film, man. I was flabbergasted watching this one, and if you have not seen it, what are you doing? Go watch it right now. So that's all I gotta say about Alien Romulus. Moving on. 8 is another 7th installment in a franchise, and instead of Alien, it's Aliens. It's VHS Beyond. This is the movie that took me completely out of nowhere. Like, yes, I really enjoyed the first 2 VHS movies, and then I saw VHS Viral, and I wanted to throw myself off a cliff. That movie was so bad. But then there was 99, 94, and 87 with the Shudder trilogy that revitalized the VHS franchise, and this is yet another installment in that franchise, and they went full crazy sci-fi Interstellar with this one. And it is as amazing as it sounds. Like, yet Dream Girl is the one segment that was not very good, but the rest of it was amazing, especially the opening segment where you have alien zombies against these workers, and you have a first-person view of one of them getting destroyed by a freaking chainsaw. For that alone, it deserves this list. But the rest of the segments are great. The VHS franchise continues to do a lot with very little. Seriously, these movies, being able to do what they do with the budget that they have is insane to me. And seeing all these different directors come together to make this incredible compilation that celebrates the sci-fi side of the horror genre, yeah, it's pretty damn good, man. You gotta check it out if you haven't already. 7, Terrifier 3. This one had to make the list. You guys know that. If you saw my unscripted movie review about it, you know why it's here. It is another great installment in this franchise. They continue to push the gore to mind-numbingly wild levels. And they continue to push the story forward, to develop the characters more, and just give people exactly what they want. More Art the Clown doing more crazy, insane shit. And that is exactly what you get in this movie, as well as a continued great performance and character development for Lauren Lavera's character. I forget her name, I'm sorry. But the rest of the movie more than lives up to everything that you want it to be, and not to mention Christmas themed. It has been a while since we've had a good Christmas horror movie. So, yeah, Terrifier 3, it makes the list. It definitely makes the list. I don't care if people give me crap for it, it's on the list. Deal with it. 6, I already talked about this one, the most surprising, Hellboy the Crooked Man. This movie is amazing. It is the most authentic version of Hellboy. It's low budget, it's independent, it's straight up horror, and it's really, really damn good. Like, yeah, it looks really cheap. That's a fault of the budget. But you get around the cheap look, you're in for a crazy movie that will send shivers down your spine and give you one of the most terrifying villains in horror movies in at least the past, 3 years. With the Crooked Man himself. This guy still haunts my nightmares, even after seeing his head blown to bits by Hellboy at the very end. But this movie is so good. I've actually read the source material since then, and it's very accurate to that source material. It is a damn good Hellboy movie. And after the disaster of 2019, we needed this, and I hope they do more. Moving on to number 5, another horror movie. Like I said, there's a lot of them on this list. And number 5 goes to Abigail, which until recently was going to be my favorite horror movie of the year. It was in my top 3 for a very long time. Until just this month when I saw my actual favorite horror movie, and it's one I got quite a bit to say about, so we'll get there when we get there. But for now, Abigail. I did a full review on this one, and it was a movie that took me by surprise in a really good way. Another one that barely missed the most surprising list. It took a concept of ballerina vampires. Yeah, it sounds as weird as you think it does. And they made it into one of the most entertaining and incredible vampire movies since Renfield. Like, this movie was so good, dude. It took me by surprise. It was so, so good. Yes, the final act kind of comes out of nowhere, but if you can get around that, you're in for an absolutely amazing splatterfest that you will not soon forget. And the little girl that plays Abigail, damn, a very good performance by this young actress. So, I got nothing else to say. It's radio silence being radio silence and making a kick-ass horror movie. Let's move on. 4. This one was on the most surprising list. This one's not a horror movie, but it had to make the top 5 because it is my most surprising movie of the year. Hundreds of Beavers. I already talked about this one at length in the most surprising list, where it came in at number 1. But to sum it up, it is a black and white, silent era, slapstick comedy with the laughs that were only given in the 30s and 40s Looney Tune cartoons. But it's also competently written, amazingly shot, wonderfully over-the-top acted, and just a non-stop hilarious thrill ride from start to finish. Like, if you have not seen Hundreds of Beavers, you need to see Hundreds of Beavers. It is a must-see movie of last year, easily. And I'm so glad that it became a big sleeper hit. I hope that these people do more of this. Now for my actual favorite horror movie at number 3, and this is the one that I literally delayed my entire list for because I had a feeling that it was going to make this list. I just was not expecting how high it landed. And, oh man, this one might go down as one of my favorite horror movies of all time, dude. I absolutely kid you not. Yes, there were some people that were bored by it. Yes, there were some people that didn't really understand what it was doing. But for those that did, you know why it's here. Number 3 is Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. I kind of spoiled that this one was on the best list in the most surprising list, but I didn't tell you how high it was. It's in the top 3, and it's the best horror movie I saw of all the movies in 2024. This movie is absolutely amazing in every single way, shape, and form, from the directing to the acting. Seriously, Lily and Bill not getting Oscar nominations is a fucking crime. Amazing makeup and effects, which they actually got nominated for. A bone-chilling atmosphere. Amazing storytelling that does a great job staying faithful to the original silent movie, but also kind of reinventing it in a very unique and interesting way. And one of the most WTF endings of the year. it's so hard to talk about this movie without spoilers, but I'll just say this. If you have not seen this movie, you need to see it. If you are someone that loves the original Nosferatu, you're going to adore this one, because it is as faithful of a readaptation of that old silent era movie as you could possibly get. It's really damn good. It's one of Robert Eggers' best movies, and I adored it. It was more than worth delaying this list for. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. Alright. Now for number 2. Oh, wait. There isn't a number 2. Yeah, I might have clickbaited you guys a little bit. Because, leading up to this, the whole build-up to this entire list was having Sonic and Deadpool go at each other for the number 1 spot. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it was a really tough choice, because both these movies are the highlights of the year. They are easily the 2 best movies of the year. And I've rewatched both several times for several reasons. But trying to pit them against one another, it's just really difficult. Like, at first I'm like, okay, I gotta have this one at number 1. But then the more I thought about it after rewatching another one, I'm like, no, I gotta have this one at number 1. And it just kept flip-flopping. So at this point, I just say screw it. Instead of having them compete for number 1, why don't they just share the number 1? So that means instead of having a number 2, we're going to have 1A and 1B. These are the 2 movies that are the best ones I saw all year. They were the ones that made my 2024, and they are the ones that I'm going to remember the year for the most above anything and everything else. So instead of having a number 2, we're just going to have a tie at number 1, and Nosferatu will stay firmly at number 3. So let's start with 1A, and this is one half of this battle, and it's one half that probably a lot of people would pick over the other one, but I like I said before, dude, I can't pick. So, in half of number 1, first half of number 1, at 1A, is Deadpool and Wolverine. Now, this movie's not on the most surprising list because I already had very high expectations going into it, and it pretty much gave me what I wanted. And then some. From Hugh Jackman coming back as Wolverine in a very clever way that still keeps respect to his ending in Logan, to Deadpool finally joining the MCU and Disney not cutting his balls off and actually letting him go full R-rated, to having this movie be a big, unexpected send-off to the Fox X-Men Marvelverse by bringing back the likes of Elektra and Blade and X-23 and the original Sabretooth. And, of course, we got to see Channing Tatum finally get to play Gambit, and it was everything that you wanted it to be and more. And I'm so glad he finally got to do it after his movie got delayed and canceled from development hell. Bullcrap. Thanks, Fox. But this movie is on the list more than anything else because it is really, really damn funny. Like, this is one of the funniest movies in the MCU, up there with the original Guardians of the Galaxy. This movie is so funny, so clever. It hits you with a million jokes at a million miles an hour. And while not every single one lands, most of them do. And they leave me laughing pretty hard, especially some of them that have extra context. And if you know that extra context, it makes it even funnier. Or just the Deadpool and Wolverine bouncing off of each other is just hilarious. Not to mention, a lot of people have talked about this, but I gotta talk about it. We finally got to see Hugh Jackman's Wolverine in the yellow and blue spandex. Like Deadpool himself said in the movie, it only took 20 effing years. And then you have the soundtrack, which in itself is kind of a joke. You have the incredible battles. They literally have one of the best battles of the year in a car. And in only a car. I don't know how they did that, but it was amazing. Then you have the long one take with the big final battle with the Deadpool core at the end. And just so much crazy wild stuff happening, and yet it all just works. Not to mention it all ties back into the other 2 movies. by still having an emotional core that it didn't need, but it's really nice that it kept that intact. And more than anything, Cassandra Nova. Talk about a character I didn't know about that now I want to know more about. Because this character was scary as all hell. At least in my opinion. I thought she was terrifying. But a lot of people think she was a mid-villain. Whatever. Opinions be opinions. But I thought this movie was so damn good, man. I've watched it numerous times over. I love the fights. I love the action. I love the comedy. I love the writing. I love the references. I love Deadpool, I love Wolverine, and I love this damn movie. And thus it's on the list. It was one of my favorite theater experiences of this year. But like I said, it's sharing the number one spot with the other movie that, I kind of already gave away, didn't I? Now let's talk about it. You knew this one had to make the list, and you know how much of a fan I am of this particular little speedy blue devil, so of course he had to be here at number one. But I was not expecting him to share the number one, but that's how amazing Deadpool and Wolverine was. So, coming in at 1B now, and the last movie we're going to talk about, and the last movie to share the number one spot, Sonic Movie 3. Damn, bro. I did not think they were going to top two. I didn't. But they found a way to do it, and they did it in a way that even I was left flabbergasted with what they did. Let's start with the biggest reason why this movie's so good. Keanu Reeves as the boy himself. My favorite character, the ultimate life form, Shadow the Hedgehog. This is going to go down as one of Keanu's best roles ever. Right up there with Neo. Right up there with friggin' it's another one, Duke Kaboom in Toy Story 4. And right up there with, of course, Ted and Bill and Ted. This guy, he was perfect for Shadow. He captured his pain, he captured his agony, he captured his anger, and he captured his character, everything about him. It was perfect. It was pretty much exactly perfect. Hell, the dude even got to hold a gun for the first time in years. Thank you, Sega. But Shadow's not the only reason this movie is as good as it is. It's also because the movie itself is just a masterpiece in my opinion. But then again, I'm a biased Sonic fan, so what do I know? But from Sonic and Tails and Knuckles all working together as a team, that part's great. How it actually went in a much darker direction than I was expecting. How we got to see Jim Carrey play two freaking Robotniks. How do you not get an Oscar nomination for that dude? That performance was one of the reasons why people wanted to see this movie at all. Then you have the great comedy that's still intact from the other two films. It's a little cringe, but it's supposed to be. Then you have the soundtrack, Live and Learn, One OK Rock, friggin' numerous others. The soundtrack in this movie was the best in the movies easily. Then you have the great character development. You have amazing action. Literally, the final battle is literally a Dragon Ball Z fight. It's literally two Super Saiyans going at it in live action. The thing that Dragon Ball Evolution should have been. You have two Super Hedgehogs battling to the death. It is amazing, and they do everything that you want them to with that. The battles in this movie are the best parts of the movie. They do not disappoint. And then the final act that pays homage to the incredible masterpiece that is Sonic Adventure 2, but also doing it in a way where it feels like its own unique thing. I cannot praise these movies enough for doing that. They take elements and homages to the games, but they still make their own original stories out of it. And this one, we get to see Sonic mature more. We get to see him struggle with grief and loss a lot like Shadow does. And the way that they reflect that off of Shadow is just amazing writing. Seriously, most people will look at it it's just a silly kids movie. No, this movie's for young adults more than anything else. It has a lot of dark moments. It has a lot of adult jokes and adult humor. And it is by far the most epic of all the movies. That big final act where we get to see super hedgehogs and the Eclipse cannon and 2 Robotniks fighting each other, and the way that they turned the shooting of the moon from a cataclysmic event into a hilarious accident, and yet it somehow worked and wasn't cringe. And then you had Eggman's sacrifice, you had the wonderful heartfelt ending, you had, of course, the end credit scene, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Yes, spoiler alert. But point is, this movie gave me everything I wanted and then some, and it turned out to be the best of the Sonic movies. There's a reason why it's already almost made $500,000. And if it weren't for Disney getting butthurt and deciding to bully theaters and lie in their marketing, it probably would be a lot higher than it is. But the fact that it's being successful at all, when going up against Disney of all people, that itself is a testament to the incredible work that Jeff, Ben, freaking Colleen, Idris, Keanu, Lee, Jim, Pat. It is a testament more than anything else to the incredible work that they've done. And I'm so happy that our Hedgehog is getting such an amazing treatment on the big screen. And then you had the post-credit scenes that tease Metal Sonic and Amy, and confirmation from media outlets that we are getting time travel in Sonic 4. And that Sonic 4 is going up against freaking Godzilla. Dude, these movies just keep upping the ante, and I am all here for it. And this movie was made off of just $125 million, dude. Like, this budget is low. It's lower than low. And yet, it continues to make insane profits, and Paramount is now so confident in this franchise that they will gladly put it up against anybody. And it'll still find ways to succeed. And to see our little blue blur, who's been through so much grief and turmoil, finally be up on the rise again, and arguably be as popular, if not even more popular than he was when he first came out in the 90s. Dude, that's amazing. The things that this movie franchise has done for Sonic's career is nothing short of incredible. And people are going to look back at it very fondly as the big revival the Hedgehog needed. And since then, Sega's followed suit, making incredible game after incredible game. Like, Sonic feels relevant and important again. And that is a really, really nice thing. That even after all these years, even after everything that he's been through, he continues to prove himself, and why he continues to be an icon of pop culture itself. Not just video games, pop culture itself. So, yeah, I mean, outside of the underwhelming, disappointing Steelbook situation I already talked about in another video, they've pretty much done everything right with Sonic 3, and I adore it. I adore it. I adore it. I adore it. And yes, while it's probably my new favorite movie of all time now, I just could not pick between this and Deadpool. Like, both these movies are everything I wanted to be and then some. They were the only two movies, well, okay, two of three movies to get a 12. The other one was Nosferatu. But I just couldn't pick between these two, and thus they are tied at the number one for the movie of the year. Call it a cop-out, call it whatever you want. I cannot pick between these two. They are both incredible movies, and they are both more than worth your time. Deadpool for the laughs and crazy adult R-rated content. Sonic for doing the ultimate life form justice on the big screen and giving us the best version, one of the best versions of Shadow we've ever gotten in the history of the franchise. Okay, I need to take a drink now. I'm honestly surprised this did not turn out as long as the worst list did, but I guess it's just a lot easier to talk about things you love rather than talk about things you hate. So, yeah, that's going to be the end of the video, and that is the final movie list of 2024. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for watching all of these. Thank you for going through 2024 with me. even at its lowest points, I was more than grateful to keep pushing through it for you guys. I do everything that I do here on Animation Station for you guys. And the fact that these almost 5 whole years of hard work, I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers. Dude, that goes beyond words. So, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for watching all the content in 2024. And I look forward to what 2025 has in store. I know we're technically in 2025, but it's January. I think we can coax it a little. So, thank you guys so much for watching this video. And if you don't mind, I got something else to do now. Because a certain something just came in. Not to mention, I'm going to be turning 24 very soon. So, I can't think of a better way to spend my big day. So, yeah, February is going to be a big cool-down month. You are going to get a review for Captain Underpants and Dogman. Don't worry, those are still coming. But the best and worst games list may not be until February. So, simply because I'm a little burned out and I need a break. So, yep, thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for watching all of these videos and all these reviews and all this content that I've made in 2024. It was by far the biggest successful year of the entire channel. Thank you guys so much. Now, if you excuse me, I got a little something to do, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next review. Peace.
Lesson how to forget. So listen and you won't regret. Be true to yourself, don't miss your chance, and you won't end up like the fool who